Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show. This is episode 393. We haven't got a guest this week. Unfortunately, our guest was ill, but they will be coming on the show probably in June. But you've got me and my better half. You've got Cindy Nicholson, the course whisperer. Cindy, would you like to... Cindy, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Absolutely, Jonathan. Hi, everyone. Cindy Nicholson here from, as John said, thecoursewhisperer.com. And basically, I help people create better online courses.
She's got used to my humour, folks. It's taken a few months. Well, you've been on the show a while now, haven't you? I think we've done some great interviews, and thank you so much for putting up with me, Cindy. Most people wouldn't, actually.
You mean I have an out, Jonathan?
But I think you got used to my kind of psychonic English humour. So... what we're going to be discussing today, folks, we're going to be discussing security. Yes, especially if you're taking payments on a membership stroke learning management course-based website. This whole area of taking payments and payment gateways and Stripe and PayPal, we're going to delve deep. What do you reckon, Cindy?
I think it's a good topic. It's, it's one of those things that, after something happens, you wish that you spent more time on figuring it out at the outset. So this is hopefully going to help people avoid some problems in the future.
Yeah, I'm going to start with some basics, folks. Obviously, when it comes to security and taking payments, some of the hosted SaaS solutions like Thinkific, Kajabi, they seem initially to have an easier vector, and they handle all that part of it. The truth is that, and I'm not choosing any specific company here because they'll probably sue me, but what I'm saying is that an internal company, when it has a security breach, folks, the natural way or its inclination to deal with it is totally different to open source approach. And what I mean by that, folks, is that if they do get a breach, they're going to keep it quiet and they're going to keep it internal and not publicize it. Deal with it. Sometimes they do deal with it effectively, sometimes they don't. But they're not going to publicize it. That's the totally opposite to open source, folks. Open source, when a security, it's called security vectors. When a vector is found, either in the core of the software or in a plugin, normally the community gives a period of time where it's not publicized for the developers of the core of WordPress or the developer of a specific plugin. They give them a little bit of time to actually fix that vector, and then they publicize it. They don't want to publicize it normally before the vector's been solved, because that would increase probably the number of sites that have been breached. But if the developer or the developer of the plugin is not responsive or doesn't seem to want to fix the vector, the community will publicize it, and then in the end the community will come together and fix the problem for them. And there have been cases in the WordPress community of certain developers of certain plugins that have their plugin has been removed from the public directory of WordPress, and they've been kind of quasi-banned from the community because they have actually been engaged in behavior that isn't tolerated by the community in general. Did that make sense, Cindy?
Yep, but I do have a question for you. Actually, I have a few questions for you. So what does it mean to have a vector like that? Does that mean somebody's been trying to come in and hack the? Explain what an actual vector is, the security vector.
Yeah. Well, fundamentally, all code. I know the buzzword is artificial intelligence, that we're all going to be replaced by robots at some stage. I'm looking forward to it, Cindy, actually being replaced by a robot. So there we go. But to be serious for once, folks, basically all code is coded by humans, and all human beings we make mistakes. So fundamentally, there's normally bugs in code, and we live another buzzword. I'm going to introduce a few buzzwords here, folks. I apologise. Is APIs, and what APIs are? They're public gateways that allow other programs to communicate with other programs. So it's a kind of like a handshake. API publicly shows a number of ways that other software can communicate with your software, right? Now, the problem, and we're getting more and more services that rely on external services to provide the service to the end client. So we have a number of APIs all working together. The problem with that, though, is it increases the level. It opens you out to security vector problems, because not only are you relying on your own software, you're relying on other people's. And with these SaaS platforms, I won't name them again because I'm not specifically pointing my finger at them. They normally are also heavily integrated into other services, providing video, email. They don't run those email servers themselves. They're relying on other companies, and they bundle their services to the end user by utilizing modern APIs. But the point I'm making is even these SaaS platforms are open to security breaches by having very elaborate API systems. Is that making any sense?
Yep. No, that makes sense.
So they're not that enclosed, actually. Modern software, almost all modern software is utilizing other company services through APIs. And by that, they're opening themselves out to the security quality or the code quality of those external services that they're relying on.
So the vector,
and all software has bugs in it, and the great thing about open source software, Cindy, is it just has as many bugs as non-open software, but you have more eyes looking at it. So you have more eyes looking at it. There's more chance that the bugs will be found. With enclosed software, the bugs aren't looked at so much. And if you get a bad player, a hacker or somebody that's part of the dark web, and they find a bug which allows them into that software, then they can sometimes take control. And basically, especially if you're dealing with financial information, people's credit cards, other information, that can become quite serious.
Okay, so my follow-up, so that makes sense in terms of what a vector is. It's really problems with the code that makes your website more susceptible to being, accessed by hackers or what have you. So that makes sense. So thank you for that. So my follow-up question up to that is, how do you know if you have these security vectors? Is it just problems when you're trying to do certain things on your website? Like, how do you know that you've got one?
Well, let's talk about WordPress and open source here, because it's the area I have the most knowledge. I am not a security expert. I have a maintenance company that supports learning management systems, so my knowledge is probably more than the average person, or probably a lot higher, but I'm not a security expert, so I don't want to tout myself like that. But let's talk. But I wanted this initial discussion because I didn't want people to think that these problems are just around WordPress or open source in general. It's just that they're more open about discussing them, where other players, it's totally the opposite. They don't want to discuss any security breaches. So people get the impression that it's only open source that you get these problems. That's a total fallacy. Now let's get into it. So fundamentally, it depends on why they will you know if your site's got hacked. Well, it really depends on the type of people that are hacking your site. But what do I mean by that, and the reasons why they're hacking your site? There were people that wanted to hack websites to utilize the actual all websites are hosted on servers, and servers are just big computers. Well, there was a host of hacking because they actually wanted to take control of the bandwidth of the server that your site was on. That's what they didn't actually want to do anything to your site. They just wanted access to the computer power because they were involved in cryptocurrency. And this is a whole other side. Fundamentally, the mining of crypto coins, you need computer power, and you could, if you could take over hundreds of websites, thousands of websites, and take a little bit of computer power, then you could mine these crypto coins. So there were people that were doing that. The problem with that, it's semi-benign, but the people, not all of them, but a lot of the people that were behind that were also engaged in other activities that were much more highly illegal. And also they shared, if your site got hacked for that particular reason, they normally shared the information on the dark web, which is a mass of international forums and other places that rather unpleasant individuals share data on. They should do that. They're normally also the type, not all, but also they love bragging about the amount of websites they've hacked into, and then normally in a community where they share information. So you normally find if you get hacked for that semi-benign reason, other people will pull in. That can be down to link building, which Google's technology still relies, it's a key part of how your website is ranked. The amount of external websites that link from their website to your website. Now,
Right.
Google's technology has got a lot more sophisticated in some ways, but it's still this linking element. It's the core part of Google's ability to judge how popular your website. So you still get a lot of hackers that you want to use automatic scripts to build links. Others just basically want to deface your website there, and you find that one day your website's great, the next day it's got pornographic images all over it. And it can happen to any website that's hosted by themselves. But a lot of this can be avoided, Cindy.
So if your website's been hacked to get the extra bandwidth, are you going to know this? Like, are you going to is your website going to slow down? Like, how do you?
You're probably not going to know it. That's why having it periodically scanned. On our WordPress, those that are on one of our plans, we utilize an external company and we put a bit of software on the websites, and they're scanned 24/7, and they're looking for unusual bandwidth activity and other activity, which then we are notified, and then we go and investigate on the behalf of the client.
All right, cool. I think that's a good time for a break, and then I've got some more questions for you, Jonathan.
Oh, superb. Yeah, Cindy's right. It's time to go for our break. She's becoming a pro, folks. She's becoming a pro. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. We're discussing all about security Cindy's got some more questions. Hopefully I'm not boring you to tears, folks, because this is really important stuff, actually, and you knowing some of the fundamentals. But before we delve some more in the murky world of security, I'd like to talk about one of our great sponsors, and that's Kinster Hosting. And now, if you host with Kinster, you'll be solving a certain high percentage of your security problems by being with a quality hosting provider, and that's what you get with Kinster, especially if you're looking for something like a membership learning management system or a WooCommerce e-commerce website. You need better quality hosting than some of the other providers, and that's what you get with Kinster. So if that sounds really interesting, I suggest that you go over to kinster.com and find out some more about their great hosting packages, and tell them that you heard about it from WP-Tonic. That'd be much appreciated. So, Cindy, you got some other questions?
Well, this is now to follow up with the last one. So you talked about having a company that scans for this. What is the average Joe supposed to do? You know, they've got a website, they've got a membership site. What can they do to protect their websites from this?
Well, there's no one key way. It's just doing a number of things that will help you keep your site secure. The first and the biggest is having decent hosting. Unfortunately, there's a lot of cheap hosting out there. I'm not going to name names because, like I say, but there is the perception of hosting being at a certain cost, which is around $3 to $5 a month. That works for a very small business that has a very basic website, right? Now, when you talk about a membership site or e-commerce or anything that's larger, which you want a certain degree of people to be utilizing your service, you need much better hosting, and that will normally cost between $15 to $30 a month, right? And you could talk about hosting over 3 episodes. It's always a really hot topic on the Facebook forums, Facebook discussion groups, everywhere. But, you know, finding a decent place to have your site hosted is important. And they also make sure that they have technical people employed that are keeping all the software that runs these servers. They're run on different forms of Linux normally, not exclusively, but normally, and keeping those servers up to date, patched, kept as secure as possible is a full-time job for really experienced IT individuals, and that's what you're paying for from that level of hosting. Then you got to do your bit. And your bit. The other great thing about these companies that are in the slightly higher price range, around the 30, is they're going to offer what is called a staging site, where you can have a full copy of your live website, where you can update your plugins and the core of WordPress, whatever open source software you're using. And then you can check out the site before you then, with one click, can migrate that version of the staging site to your live site. So that avoids you updating something on your live site and having problems. And especially with a membership site, you don't really want that. So they provide all these bells and whistles that will keep your life happy, and also keep it much more secure, Cindy.
So web hosting, what else?
Well, you've got to keep your plugins up to date, you know, and you've got to be fussy where you get your plugins. You know, at WP-Tonic, we offer a turnkey solution where we provide a platform with some of the best WordPress technology. aimed at those that looking to build a successful course platform. But we've checked them all over. They're all premier plugins that we offer in our suite, and we know all the developers, and we've used them over a number of years, and we know the quality of code, and they work together. A lot of people, when they go in, starting off with WordPress, they're going crazy and they know nothing about the quality of who's coding these plugins, and also they tend to put multiple versions of plugins that are doing the same kind of job, and then that's where you get into trouble, and also not keeping them updated. To avoid security problems, you need to keep everything updated as much as possible.
So when it comes to plugins, is there any, what red flags would you have people look for in order to avoid downloading certain plugins? Because there's thousands of them out there. So what process for making the decision to download?
At the present moment, on the WordPress on the plugin exchange, there's 18,500 actually.
Is that how many there is? Holy.
Roughly about 18,500. Well, basically, is this their first plugin? Have they got other plugins have they got a track record? Basically, have they kept that plugin updated? When was the last time it was updated? Does it work with all this information will be shown in the WordPress exchange? Will it it shows when it was updated, how regularly it's been updated, how many people have downloaded it and used, when it was developed, and have the developers developed other WordPress plugins? I suggest when it's key functionality, you then either hire a company like ourselves, or you do the research yourself. You should be reasonably fussy about what kind of plugins you're putting on your website. But the truth is, and let's be frank, this is one of the reasons why these SaaS services are attractive initially to people, is that you're not having to deal with that. But on the other hand, there are other hybrid solutions like what WP-Tonic offers that solves a lot of that hassle. So you get the best of both worlds. You get an open system that's yours, but you're not having to deal with all this research and hassle part of it, are you?
No. What if a plugin hasn't been updated in what frame of time would you then get concerned?
Well, if it hasn't been updated for 3 to 4 months, alarm bells will start ringing, but it just really depends on if the core WordPress has been updated also. And there is no fixed date about core patches updates when they are published, so it's reliant on that. But if a plugin for about 6 months hasn't seen any updating, I would start get a little bit alarmed myself.
Yeah, well, that's a good kind of benchmark to look for.
Yeah.
All right, so you've talked about hosting, you talked about plugins and keeping your plugins up to date. Anything else that people can do to kind of protect their website membership sites?
Well, almost all websites now are HTTPS, which is a certificate, secure socket certificate, and almost all websites, not all of them, there's still millions, but over the past 18 months, almost all websites are now HTTPS. The main drivers of this was that Google said that if your site wasn't HTTPS, you were going to have a search penalty imposed on your website. And also, if you go to Chrome or any of the leading up-to-date browsers, which is Chrome 60%, Firefox about 20%, Safari around 10%, a mobile or desktop, you go to a site that isn't HTTPS, you're going to probably see some indication that that site isn't secure. With Chrome, they actually come up with a message, and so does all the leading ones. Do you want to browse this page is unsecure? Have you seen those messages?
I have definitely seen those messages.
Well, what you're saying is the site hasn't got a secured socket certificate, and they used to be really quite expensive and you still normally have to pay for one when you're dealing with a membership learning management system. But not always. It does depend on the volume and the level of security that's necessary. A free secure socket technology, it's called Encrypt, came on the market, and they drastically reduced the price of the certificate to a level where their technologies was free, and that's most quality hosting providers provide secure socket certificate through them. So there's no reason why your site shouldn't be secure. If your hosting provider can't provide that, normally that's a sign that you're with a pretty crap hosting provider, and maybe it's time to move on.
So, so my first question around this is, how does somebody know if this is set up on their website? I know that, I've seen the not secure beside the URL up in the search bar, but how does somebody know if they have this already set up on their website?
Yeah, well, you'll see the HTTPS, and you also see the green padlock in your browser. If you don't see that, that suggests that your site hasn't been set up correct. And in 2019, you really do need that, because you are going to be penalised, especially on the mobile. And 70 to 80% of people that are going to be coming to your website are going to be coming through either a phone or tablet. That varies depending on the kind of site and the audience that your site is aimed at. But when it comes to actual course website, a lot of people will initially be coming to it. I don't know, you probably got more aware about the actual any statistics about how people consume courses after they buy them. But I'd imagine there's a high level, a lot of people are using tablets to actually consume courses, which is classified as a mobile device. So we're getting to the end of this, Cindy. We're getting to the half hour. So hopefully, listeners and viewers, this has been useful. What I would also like to tell you is that me and Cindy are doing a course. We're doing a webinar on Thursday, the 30th of this month. And it's going to be at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Thursday, the 30th of May. And me and Cindy are going to be talking about the 7 things that you need to know and get right when you're doing your first course. And we're going to be covering a lot of ground, aren't we, Cindy? I think it's excellent value. And it's free, and it's going to be live. You'll be able to ask questions at the end of the call of our presentation. We'll be covering a lot of stuff, a bit about security as well, and you'll be able to answer questions. And all you have to do is go to the WP-Tonic website, WP-Tonic /webinar, and you'll be able to register for this free course. We had some technical problems last month, so we couldn't do it, but they have been fixed. So you'll be able to register for the course, for the webinar, and you'll be able to learn some tips and information. That's right, isn't it? It's going to be great, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Right, that's great. So we're going to wrap up the podcast part of the show, folks. Next week, hopefully, we're going to have a great guest, and we'll see you next week, folks. Bye.
Bye.